You've heard of expanded access programs. They're special treatment use clinical trials for people who can't get into regular clinical trials. But you're less familiar with the data that's generated from expanded access programs. We're going to solve that here. I'm Jess Rabourn, founder of WideTrial and Access Pharma. My job is to help healthcare and life science leaders bring investigational treatments to the patients who need them. The data generated is critical to this goal, so let's get to it. In 1988, the FDA created a channel for enabling patients who couldn't get into clinical trials to still be able to try the drug being studied prior to market approval if their condition was serious or life-threatening. In the backdrop of the AIDS crisis, this meant doctors now had a way to accommodate patients who were too sick to be good research subjects, but who might nevertheless benefit from trying the new drug and who had just as great a need for exploratory options as the smaller numbers of people who could get into the research trials. Now, after 35 years, over 500,000 Americans have been treated in expanded access programs in a range of therapeutic areas, usually in cohort programs that were much larger than the research trial for the respective drug. While the primary purpose of expanded access programs is to provide treatment options, there's a big secondary benefit, and that is learning. Learning how a medicine performs in a broader group of patients that's more representative of the target population, and learning what kinds of patients may benefit most from the new medicine, and whether any subgroups don't benefit or could even be harmed by it. For example, the ERESA EAP in non-small cell lung cancer showed that a drug targeting EGF receptor benefited patients whose tumors overexpressed that target, but also benefited patients whose tumors had normal levels of EGFR. This EAP also resolved a specious safety concern that had previously been raised by coincidence of interstitial lung disease in a small clinical trial of the drug in Japan. Other global EAPs showed safety and effectiveness in ethnic populations that were not highly represented in the research trials. FDA has released guidances on how this data can support submissions for market approval. This is real-world evidence because it's created from a broader, more real-world cross-section of the target population, but also because of a wider range of circumstances and settings than a traditional clinical trial, and often more patient-centric endpoints than the ones used in research studies. Now, you may have thought real-world evidence in pragmatic trials look only at approved products. It's a forgivable mistake because real-world data is observational, meaning getting it doesn't interfere with the medical care of patients. And usually this means treatments and diagnostics that are market approved, but not always. What about patients who are dying of conditions for which there aren't any meaningfully effective marketed products? Best medical care here can include non-marketed investigational products through expanded access. This is why expanded access is not an intervention, and the study of the data is observational. So a data-generating EAP is truly a pragmatic trial of a non-marketed product. The design of the data capture is up to the sponsor and the healthcare providers. The worst mistake for either side to make is to regard an EAP as a commercially funded research trial. Just because it has a protocol and includes an investigational product doesn't mean it's not primarily for care as an amenity for health systems to offer their patients. The administration and monitoring of the treatment should fit as much as possible within normal care that's reimbursable by a patient's health plan. It's inappropriate and not historical best practice for sites to charge the sponsor a study fee when taking part in expanded access. Therefore, sponsors have to be reasonable about the amount and the nature of data capture requested and be prepared to defray some of the care team's expense if that data ask increases. Doing this right will raise the chances of generating structured, generalizable evidence from the program. The categories of raw data are the same as in a research trial, and the data management systems used follow the same CDISC C- standards. But the measurements chosen and the way in which the data are captured and centralized vary drastically from one program to the next. Fortunately, new technologies are sprouting up every week to make this easier. For example, mapping directly from patients' electronic medical records and compiling disparate data sets into a single DB format for each therapeutic area. Data gained from expanded access programs complement disease research and pharmacological research at large scale. Through new markets for data sharing, we can tie in molecular profiling, deep health history, and patient-generated data. We can continue the learning by tying in future captured data from other programs for each patient via new tokenization and consenting tools. This is possible at wide scale because EAPs bring investigational medicine to everyday healthcare, beyond the traditional trial enterprise, and for patients who can't get into trials, but who constitute the vast majority of the population in most therapeutic areas. 25 million Americans have immediately life-threatening conditions with unmet need for effective treatment or diagnostic products. That's more than 100 times greater than the annual enrollment capacity of all interventional trials put together. But this 90% can be engaged, and this is what makes expanded access the most substantial potential source of real-world evidence in the development of new medicines. I've advised over 100 companies on this topic. If you want to learn more about expanded access, click like and subscribe on YouTube, watch our other videos, and explore our deep library on accesspharma.com.